All right, welcome to part 20 and the last of my series looking at Russ Miller's 50 Facts versus Darwinism in the textbooks. We are just about to finish up the section on human evolution and go on to a few assorted tidbits.
Louis Leakey's wife, Maeve Leakey, an avid evolutionist, admitted all those trees of life with their branches of our ancestors, that's a lot of nonsense. Why is that? Because to be true, they would be made up of missing links. In the fossil record, none have been found that will hold up to scrutiny.
First of all, Louis Leakey's wife was Mary Leakey. Maeve Leakey was his daughter-in-law. And the quote that quote is usually attributed by creationists to Mary Leakey, not Maeve Leakey. Just wanted to point that out. Now, I can't find the original quote. I've searched and searched, and I can't find it anywhere. And well, actually, I find the quote on guess what? Creationist websites. Tons of them. Lots of creationist websites have that quote. I can't find it on any legitimate sites. I can't find any primary sources for that. So I'm gonna just say I'm calling bullshit on that quote. And here's a couple of reasons why. One thing, creationists are notorious at taking things out of context. I've demonstrated that throughout the last 19 parts of the series. But also, Mary Leakey drew a shitload of those trees and continued to do so until she died, and her son continues to do so, and his wife. I mean, I would find it hard to believe that she would say that these are all nonsense. That doesn't make a bit of sense to me at all. Now, she might have been talking about some aspect of it or some branch, maybe, that this was all nonsense and that she was rewriting it, or that her opinions on this or that fossil was different and that portion of it was nonsense. But to say that the human evolutionary tree with its branches is all nonsense, I have to believe is a lying sack of shit quote mine, like all the rest of them you've brought up so far.
And here's a brand new textbook showing kids that humans are related to all sorts of apes, including tarsiers. We're related to tarsiers? Grandma, what big eyes you got?
Wow, what the fuck do you have against tarsiers there, Russ? Let me give you a little bit of a lesson in primate phylogeny, since you may have skipped that class when you were getting your 165 undergraduate credits with no degree. So, primates are roughly split into two large groupings. The monkeys and apes, including humans, are one big group, the advanced primates, and then there's the prosimians, the primitive primates. Now, that group, the prosimians, that's really a paraphyletic assemblage. Because in reality, the tarsiers are actually lumped in a big group with the monkeys and apes, while they still are collectively called prosimians, if that makes sense, because they have prosimian traits, primitive traits. So what makes a prosimian as opposed to the higher primates, or as opposed to, say, a monkey, is the fact that prosimians have things like a wet nose. If you've ever seen a dog or a cat or a cow, the majority of mammals have a wet nose, a nose composed of a type of mucous membrane, instead of sort of normal skin on the nose like you see in humans, monkeys, and apes. Right? That's one big difference. Another one is the fact they have what's called grooming incisors, which is a specialized teeth used for grooming the fur. We see in the prosimians, we don't see in the advanced monkeys and apes. But the reason nobody ever said that tarsiers, we evolved from a tarsier. You obviously have no idea how to read a phylogenetic tree at all. That's really quite amazing to me. Well, actually, I'm just kidding. I'm being an ass. It doesn't amaze me. It doesn't surprise me at all that you don't know how to read it. That is a branch off the tree leading to tarsiers, meaning that at that point where the branch occurs, it is suggesting that the monkeys, apes, and humans have a common ancestor with the tarsier, not that we evolved from the tarsier. The major group of primates, called the tarsoids, have a huge suite of features. Not just the living ones, actually ones that are the tarsoids that are extinct aren't all specialized like the modern tarsier. The modern tarsier has a number of adaptations for its lifestyle, it's like jumping and such. The huge eyes, all of that, the nocturnal lifestyle and things have adapted or have been modified in the living tarsier. Fossil ones didn't have those exact same adaptations. They had the more primitive condition of them is a whole lot more like monkeys than is seen in the groups like the lemurs, for example, or the bush babies or galagos. Hopefully this will make some sense. And also, this is not just based on fossils. This is actually based on genetic analysis, ERV insertions, and mitochondrial DNA analysis. Put the tarsiers as the closest relative of all of the other monkeys, apes, and humans. So this isn't just colored lines on a paper. This is based on real, solid fossil and genetic evidence. You can argue with that if you wish.
Think about this logically. With millions of individual apes and monkeys having lived and died over the past 500 years alone, why does finding a monkey bone prove evolution? Doesn't it just prove that when apes and monkeys die, they leave their bones behind? Absolutely.
Again, your ignorance shows there, Russ. You're showing a bunch of hominid fossils and calling them monkey bones. I know what you're doing is you're trying to dismiss all of the work of these great scientists. You're trying to dismiss all of the evidence with one big sweep, calling it monkey bones, even though these monkeys walked on two legs, and that's a proven fact. These monkeys made tools, albeit primitive in some cases. That's a proven fact, and a whole suite of other features that these monkeys had that are very, very much like what we would expect to see as an intermediate between humans and apes. Just doing the illiterate Nick thing and saying monkey bones, it's typical.
The Bible tells us to avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called, which some people professing have erred concerning their faith. You know, this was written at the time the Gnostics were using false knowledge to undermine people's faith in the Scriptural God. Well, there's a lot of false knowledge out there today, and two of the leading components are Darwinian evolution and millions of years of death and suffering leading to man.
1 Timothy chapter 6, Russ. So I take it you believe that particular work is worthy of respect, words to live by, wisdom, something you would read and study and gain insight for how to live your life by, I would guess, since you are citing it as an important verse to your ministry, right? But I have a question for you then. What about 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 1 and 2? Now, you cite from the end of that chapter. What about the beginning of that chapter? I'm just curious if you hold it to the same standard, where it says that a slave should be obedient to his master because that is a glorification of God. And especially if a slave is a Christian and his master is a Christian, the slave should be respectful and happy with his servitude because that simply is the way of the world. That's the way it is. I believe it says something about to not do so is a blasphemy or is against the word of God. So tell me, Russ, with that in mind, have you purchased any slaves lately? I'm curious, because if you do, a little bit of word of advice: get the Christian ones. They tend to be a little bit more manageable.
A review of Darwinism versus real science will show you that no one has ever seen anything Darwinian macro evolve,
except for the hundreds of examples where we have seen things Darwinian evolve.
The fossil record shows no intermediate kinds,
except for the tens of thousands of intermediate forms we see between every major lineage of vertebrates, between all of the major groups of invertebrates, things like echinoderms, mollusks, arthropods, have a wonderful and very, very complete fossil history.
Living species show no intermediate kinds flopping around on Earth today.
Except again for the millions that do.
Natural selection removes any rare mutations. It doesn't cause them to take over the gene pool.
Except for the dozens and dozens of pop-gen papers published showing actual, real, rare mutations, rare alleles, taking over and dominating a population.
The law of biogenesis, the DNA code barrier, gene depletion, the first and the second laws of thermodynamics, etc., say Darwinism is scientifically impossible.
Oh yeah, Russ? Well, I say that the Easter Bunny, Duke Leto Atreides II, Popeye, and Hercules all prove Christianity is false.
This philosopher stated the theory of evolution will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. Posterity will marvel at so flimsy and dubious an hypothesis could have been accepted. He's saying people will be laughing at us for having believed in this fairy tale.
Malcolm Muggeridge was a British journalist who had no scientific training of any kind. His credibility in speaking about biological evolution is about on level with yours, Russ, which is fuck all.
Now, Louis Leakey would be a prime example. He was the child of Christian missionaries to Africa, and he grew up and wanted to spend his life as a missionary in Africa himself. But he went off to college and lost his faith and dedicated his life to refuting biblical creation. Every single discovery that made him a world-renowned evolutionist has been scientifically refuted today.
Hey, Russ, you might want to read, there's a book called White African. It's Louis Leakey's biography. I've read it. You might want to read it, although I realize that things like nasty little things like, well, I don't know, the truth have no meaning to you whatsoever. But in that book, he discusses when he was 12 about his ambitions to become a missionary, and then a relative gave him a book on archaeology and human evolution, and he started reading and became fascinated with the idea that he was living in the place, the cradle of mankind, potentially. So this going away to college and losing his faith is a load of bullshit.
Michael Shermer is another good example. He went off to college to become a pastor, but studied psychology and lost his faith. He's now the director of Skeptic Society and editor of Skeptic Magazine and the author of many anti-Christian books. A brilliant individual, fooled by the false teachings of Darwinism.
I'd like a source where Michael Shermer was a fundamentalist Christian who lost his faith because of Darwinism. Everything I've read about Michael Shermer states that he lost his faith. He was a fundamentalist Christian. However, in psychology class, in long discussions with students and the professors, discussing things like the psychology of belief led him to start questioning his own belief, not Darwinism. Again, you're going to blame all the world's ills on poor old Darwin there, douchebag.
Christianity has no quarrel with real science. One of the lies that evolutionists will throw out there is someone like myself is against science. Not at all. I'm for real science. I'm actually the one person standing up for science here.
Please say that again.
I'm actually the one person standing up for science here.
Oh my God, Russ. Oh God, I hate you.
We have no quarrel with real science because real science finds the truth, and truth comes from God.
And as I've stated before, Russ, you wouldn't recognize truth if it bent you over that podium and brutally sodomized you. So, fuck you. Alright, that's the end. This is the end of part 20, the end of the last part. He talks a bit more about this delusion of evolution and the trouble it causes, and I just don't have the patience to go through it. For those of you who watched all 20 parts, thanks. I still don't quite understand why, but I appreciate it. You guys take care and enjoy.
This ponage is too hot. This ponage is too cold. This ponage is just right.